Hi guys, I'm Flash Flavor. Welcome to my channel again. So I just want to do like a brief testimony of how I came to be a Christian, to know God. Um, it's not going to be very in detail because I feel like different parts of my life could be a separate video. So this is just like a brief through. So just be warned, this isn't very in depth, but just a brief overview so you get a general idea of how I came to be where I am. So anyway, I first heard like the concept of like church was when I was in kindergarten. I had, this boyfriend, and we were going to get married because, things are very serious in kindergarten. Of course. And I still knew him in like first and second grade, but we didn't play together as much because at that point he figured out he wanted to play with boys more than me. I guess he figured out we weren't getting married. I don't know. But somehow I still talked to him, and he told me, like, why don't you go to church? And I was like, what? What's church? And he didn't really tell me what it was, but because he said that, I was like, I want to go. So I went home and I asked my parents, like, I want to go to church. And basically they just said, like, you don't want to go there. It's not a fun place. Like, it's boring. And they were asked, like, well, how did you even hear about this? And I'm like, oh, Thomas told me. And they're like, well, what did he say about it? And I'm like, what's 2 plus 2? And they're like, that's not what they teach at church. So they literally dropped the issue, basically kept telling me that it was not anywhere I wanted to go. That was really boring. And then, so basically, my grandmother, when I was in second grade on New Year's Eve, she passed away. And then a short time after that, we attended her funeral, and, similar to a church service, so I sat through the whole thing. I'm like 8 years old. So they decide that, okay, yeah, I did sit through the funeral without causing a fuss or whatever. So they decide, okay, sure, you can go to church. So they took me to this church downtown in my town, which, I don't know how to word this without sounding, I'm trying not to sound offensive or anything, but it's like a lot of gray heads. There's a lot of elderly people, not much of a children's anything going on. There's like a few children, but hardly. And, well, they didn't really discuss, like, Jesus that much. It was like just the message was like general life lessons. So it was pretty bizarre that way. But yeah, and the children's ministry or Sunday school actually wasn't very steady because there was only like 5 kids maybe, and they barely showed up. And then my mom got roped into teaching Sunday school for like a year, and that made her uncomfortable. So my family tried church shopping for like a year, just because they felt I wanted to be there, so that was nice of them, I guess. But they never could find anything they liked. I was too young to know what was going on. Oh, here's something I should have mentioned. So at the first church, when I was like in 3rd grade, I got baptized, but I didn't really understand what it was. They just sprinkled water on my head and had me repeat stuff. I didn't really know what I was saying, so yeah. I'm baptized, but it didn't really mean anything, to be honest. But so yeah, and we were church shopping, and nothing came of that because we didn't really find anything. Then the next year, I made a friend in school. I should make up a name for her so I don't actually say her name. So I will call her Sarah. Sure. Sarah invites me to go to her church, which I thought was just nice. I didn't realize like how much of an ulterior motive she had, like how much she was like on a mission to save my soul. I thought we were just friends and hanging out, but the church she brought me to, I spent like a good 3 years there, like from 6th grade to 8th grade, just because there were like other people my age there and I like being around them. However, this would be a separate video also, just because it's so crazy, but the first like half hour I'm there, they have me say the prayer of accepting Jesus into my heart, and I did not know what I was saying. So, yeah, that's not really the best way to go about bringing Jesus to people, but you can imagine how confused I was when I went to the church service, because this was a church lock-in. I went to the church service on the Sunday, and my name was in the bulletin, and they called me to the front and gave me a bunch of gifts, and I was just like, because I said a prayer? What? I get free stuff just because I said a prayer? What did I do? And I had no idea what they thought I did. But yeah, they were just always too forceful, like you were never doing enough. It was actually to the point where people were concerned I was like, me and my mother, who would go to this church with me, were like in a cult. And yeah, it was like, why are you just sitting there singing during the songs? You should be raising your hands. Oh, you read the book of Mark. Okay, now read the whole New Testament. Like, you just never were doing enough. Which, you know, what do they know? Jesus is what's in your heart, not outward. So, yeah, that church was a little too much. But yeah, again, that's another video for another day. And then I didn't go to church for a while. And I did miss it because, you know, there was like some kids I knew there, and I miss like that interaction and going to a youth group every week. But I knew I didn't want to get like caught up in that crazy forcefulness. So, but I figured out that somehow that not all Christians are like this. So I sort of hinted at my friend, another friend, not Sarah, we'll call this one Trixie. I hinted at my friend Trixie, like, oh, I really miss youth group. I really wish I had a youth group to go to. And she invited me technically, but I was kind of pushing her to invite me, if that makes sense. And finally, she's like, oh, you can come to my youth group. which this was good because in the year that I had been out of going to church and stuff, I, I wasn't doing super bad stuff, but I was like, dating not so good boy, and I was just kind of fooling myself because I thought I was so cool because I was 14 years old with a boyfriend when a lot of my friends didn't have boyfriends. Yeah, and I didn't have the most appropriate relationship with that boyfriend, just FYI. And so it was good that I got into this youth group again. So I went to this youth group at this new church, and for the longest time I considered this church my home church. I went to the youth group every week, and it was cool because the small groups that you broke out of, like first you would meet in the big group and then you break into small groups, and they were based on your gender and age. So I was with like freshmen and sophomores and then juniors and seniors of girls, and so it was cool. And then you'd have like the same leader. That way we'd constantly have this mentor. So I had the same mentor, and she was great. We talked to her about stuff, and we talked to each other about like our issues, and it was really good. But yeah, I never went on Sundays. It actually wasn't until a lot later that I accepted Jesus, because I still was just kind of like courting Jesus. Like I wasn't committing to like a marriage with Jesus, if that makes sense, metaphorically. And so yeah, I even graduated high school with this mindset, really. I got a job at Safeway grocery stores as like a courtesy clerk. So for whatever reason, they wouldn't let me work less than like 35 hours a week while I was going to school full time. So I didn't have time to do like anything else besides school and work. So yeah, I didn't go to church, anything. And then I realized after a while that I was not in a good place with this job, so I quit. And literally that month, I realized I was just lacking Jesus, because I was just so lonely. I mean, because I was working so much and going to school, and I didn't like have a lot of people in my life. So that also made me realize that I needed to have Jesus with me. And but that was kind of the other thing, because I always had trouble making friends due to some issues that happened. Another video for another day. And so Jesus was always there. He kept pursuing me. So when I was in elementary school, and my to-be husband first told me about church, Jesus was pursuing me then. When my friend Sarah first brought me to her church, even though I felt that church wasn't doing super good things, it still planted some seeds of knowledge in my head. And even though it somewhat traumatized me in some ways, it planted those seeds of knowledge in my head, and Jesus was pursuing me. And then the same thing with my friend who brought me to the church that I went to for a long time. Jesus was planting seeds and pursuing me. He never gave up. So the theme is, Jesus is always pursuing you, even if you don't think he is, because that's certainly my story here.